Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
All right, back again in the Trek space. This is the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. I am your humble servant, Trek Master of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, coming at you, as always, with my esteemed companion, the number one guy on the west side of Grand Rapids for Star Trek. That'd be Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good afternoon. How are you today?
Hello, doing all right.
All right, good deal. Well, we're going to talk some Trek today, including wrapping up what could be the finale of Star Trek Prodigy, because we don't know if that show's going to survive, although it does seem, and I should have posted a link with it, but I saw a headline earlier this week that said it was really blowing streaming numbers way over on Netflix. Slamming it, it's got really high, I say high minutes, which is funny because it makes me think about how in the old days, and Peter, this was before your time using cell phones, but everything used to be in minutes. Oh, you get so many minutes. It was before texting and stuff. You know, if you go over your minutes, it costs more. So, yeah, but that's really how a lot of streaming programs are measured. They say, oh, X number of minutes were downloaded for this, and Prodigy has been doing quite well. So that's exciting, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be more of it. I mean, people have been excited about the prospect of a follow-on show to Picard featuring the adventures of Captain Seven and Raffi, potentially called Star Trek Legacy, since, that show wrapped up, which was 18 months ago, and there's zero where everybody talks about it, but there's no word about it. So,
no emotion on that whatsoever.
Everything is just headcanon until you hear something from the good people at CBS. But anyway, before we get that started, as always, we got to do the segment I call Paying the Bills, which I do with pleasure, is when I talk about our Secret Friends Unite Patreon squad. These are the wonderful folks over at patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite that give us the extra oomph that we need to create great new content. Peter and I have a great Patreon show that we frequently collaborate on, where he and I have been talking about Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica, and we'll be soon sitting down to talk about season 3 of that show. That show is called The Facts Geek Life. Todd, who's my other SFU founder that I do Secret Friends Unite show with, we do a great show called The Spinner Rack, where we talk about comics, and our partner Mark has a great walk and talk show called Walk Nerdy with Me. So a lot of fun. You also get ad-free versions of our shows, early versions of our shows, including this one that you're listening to right now, and a lot of other great perks for as little as $2 a month. Again, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, 7 days for free. And if you like it, we would definitely love to have you stick around. At our besties level, our friend Chris 1H1D, my partner, my figure collecting partner, Derek Trevelyan from right here in West Michigan, Francie, who is my wife's awesome hairdresser, Mr. Xbox Expansion Press, Luke Lore, who's going to be guesting with us on SFU later this month, and my great uncle Tim. Very grateful for his support. He's a member of my family who listens to the show that I'm aware of. On our Friends with Benefits level, John Sedorf, Phoenix Sisters Entertainment, friend of the show Kelly and her partner Crayley, Brendan Myers, Corey and HD, and Matthew Keel. Very grateful for your patronage. And last but not least, top of the big period in our Secret Friends Unite super squad, the awesome, nice family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. We couldn't do it without you. So we're very grateful for your support. Again, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. There'll be a link in the show notes. Definitely consider logging on for a week, trying us out. And if you like what you hear, please consider sticking around. Okay, bills paid. Let's move on to a news item. So, Peter, where do you land with Star Trek magazines? Do you frequent them? Have you had subscriptions over the years, or
haven't
is
had
it
any
just
subscriptions to them? I've seen them around. I remember when, I was a frequenter of the Star Trek website in its early days.
Right.
So I saw a lot of the stuff there. I mean, they didn't have the articles or anything, obviously, but they would tell me like, hey, the magazine's releasing and it has this interview with this person, or, Voyager's ending. So here's the thing.
And I've had a ton over the years myself. I subscribed to and I managed to rebuy over the years the thick bound Star Trek. It was the U.S. adaptation of the UK series, The Fact Files, which we used a lot of those files to make our SFI costume guide, which you and I worked on together. But anyway, so I've been a fan of different publications on and off, but a publication that's been around since 1995, which started life known as Star Trek Magazine, but was rebranded as the Star Trek Explorer in 2021, is coming to an end. And it's the end of an era for a lot of things, as I said, nearly 30 years in publication. But, it's funny, a lot of older folks, my mother, for example, loves magazines. She'll do magazine subscriptions for April for Good Housekeeping or whatever it is. And it's always a chuckle because it ends up being, we're in an era where so much of everything that we do is electronic that you don't get a lot of stuff in the mail, and certainly magazines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly from 1996 till probably about 2018. And now I don't think it even really exists in its physical form anymore. So it's just, the writing was on the wall for the people over at, Titan Magazines, which I believe is a UK company, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it was a quarterly magazine. Part of me feels bad about it because I know that friend of the show, Kurt Krug, who is also a member of our SFI chapter and a guy who I've collaborated with for a long time, fellow MSU grad, and he's actually sent some different interview prospects my way that we featured on our Patreon and have shown up on our network feed, that he freelanced for them. So I know that's lost income for him, which kind of sucks. But it's tough. Most decisions of this kind are obviously made. It's a business decision, and if they needed a certain threshold in physical subscribers in order to make it profitable and or be able to represent that to their advertisers, they didn't have that, the magazine was gonna cease to exist. Yeah. I know that I've not really paid attention to any print magazine in the Star Trek space in a lot of years. I mean, even this article that I'm reading to you about it from comes from trekmovie.com, which is where I get most of my Star Trek news, because I tend to trust the research as someone who's lived in the journalist content creator space for my whole life. I tend to be very picky about reporting and sharing things that I don't think are reliably sourced. And this is a website that I happen to trust. So that's tough. It's tough for people who make them, but all things in media change. I mean, is the same for people who, lamented radio on the decline, which is, that's something that I did. Part of my career, I sold radio advertising, but same thing with, terrestrial television with classic networks and things like that. Someone on our United Trekkers Discord just earlier this week was talking about, well, I just don't feel, the engagement because I've not, checked out Paramount Plus, or I think, Star Trek should be back on TV. And I said, it was a younger person too, who was instigating this conversation. I'm like, you can like it all you want, but you're not really turning back the clock with this kind of stuff. It's like saying that you're hoping VHS tapes are going to come back. It's just things have moved on.
There is something to be said about some technology or some modes of entertainment returning. Vinyl's made a comeback.
True.
So physical media has made a comeback. I'm saying is like it is possible for there to be a return to some forms of media.
So. And I would say vinyl has an inherent enhanced qualities over streaming or really digital music. I know that was already there because, vinyl, it lands different and you hear things different and this and that. I've yet to hear somebody tell me that, well, I think the picture is better and the sound is better. Watch my VHS tape versus
I'm not saying VHS Blu-ray. Tapes particularly. No, I'm saying, all I'm saying is that there's some things that, especially when we're seeing with the streaming wars and all these things, it's not, I don't think it's a done deal that we're out of things being physical or analog.
Absolutely.
And as we've heard from me being a big proponent of certain things in TOS, I don't think the analog's going to go away because there's some stuff that we're going to figure out that you need a fallback for because some digital things just don't, they function as novelty, but when push comes to shove, especially in high stress, high functioning environments, sometimes the digital doesn't work. And I say
Right.
this as someone who has worked in tech. Sometimes you
Right.
just
Yeah.
need,
Things
sometimes
they
you
just
just
melt.
need the analog stuff because it's
Right. Yeah. And in entertainment, I definitely have. They're off to my left here. Discs, DVDs, and Blu-rays that I will hang on to. But the majority of them, I've kind of let go. So I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of enjoy this movie, and I might want to watch it every couple of years. Well, it's streaming somewhere, and if I go to find it streaming and it's not there, I'll probably just buy it because it'll cost $10. And then I have one last thing cluttering up my small capacity to hold stuff.
or
So
you can do what I
yeah,
do and move my discs manually onto a media server, and then I can just
should
do
get.
it that way. So I get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I can get around to doing it. But at any rate, RIP to Star Trek, the magazine / the Star Trek Explorer, and people affected by that. But again, my personal preference in getting my Star Trek headlines is TrekMovie.com. I'm not giving them a wholehearted website endorsement because we're not in business, but I give them a personal endorsement because I do like what I read out of there. So, all right, well, let's move on, and we will talk about what could potentially be the end of a program that has had kind of an interesting history. Star Trek Prodigy started out as a joint venture between CBS / Viacom / Paramount, and then the Nickelodeon imprint as a animated program that's geared towards a younger audience back in 2021, I think, maybe end of 2020.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
something like
remember when it
right
started.
around there.
And then during the blowout during the strikes last year, CBS put it up for sale to an unknown buyer. That buyer ended up being the second season had already been completed or nearly completed by the time this had happened. They put it on the block. The folks at Netflix snagged it. They dropped the first season, I believe, Jan 1 of this year, and it blew up. People are absolutely loving on it. Kids were loving on it. It was doing incredibly well. And then on July 1, they dropped all 20 episodes of the then completed season 2, which we have been breaking down in either 2 or 3 episode segments here so that we didn't try to find a way to cram it all into something, and it gives us something to talk about until we have new programming, which is coming up right just getting into October 24th. We'll have Lower Decks to talk about, which I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the final 3 episodes of this, not knowing if it will survive. Though I think you'll find that they did kind of put a bow on this and leave the door open for more adventures, but then also to kind of leave it as a finale need be. So, Peter, why don't you kick us off by giving us a little summary of episode 18?
All right, episode 18, Admiral Janeway. Well, I should give you the title, shouldn't I? Touch
Yes,
of
please.
Gray. Interesting.
Because they both have it, but
yes,
her
and
Chakotay, they're a little gray about.
Yep. Hilariously, it's the classic cartoon with just like a shock of gray right in the
yes.
front.
The skunk stripe. Yeah. In the early 70s, my mother, who had dark hair at the time, did a single blonde. It was either blonde or gray. I can never really tell in the old like videos and photos, but she had a big old stripe going down her hair. So the kind of the skunk stripe is the name it got dubbed at the time.
I mean, the worst one I've seen was Data in All Good Things. That was.
Oh, God, yes. Well, it looks like a bloody skunk.
Yes. So. But anyway, Admiral Janeway devises a clever plan to liberate her crew from Essensia's prison, where they're trapped with an angry captive from the Loom.
Oh my gosh, they make it sound like being trapped with like the honey badger, because that's kind of how it ends up.
That is kind of how that is, yeah.
Yeah, Space Bear Honey Badger. Oh, that could be a name of the episode. I had I had an initial name that makes reference to what you and your brother stopped by. I was chatting with April and I yesterday at the toy show we were working at, and we were talking about the fashion choices that happened in the last episode of the series, and that kind of sparked my imagination. But all right, so talk to me about the episode. What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Yeah, so we had where we last left off our gang. They got captured by Essensia and they're thrown into a prison. When we eventually discover there's somehow Essensia has captured one of the Loom with a basically a control collar that I guess prevents it from doing temporal jumping.
It's one of those, collars. It was like the control, like in
it's like
Deadpool,
the one that,
when they have them all in prison.
It's similar to the one that they had on Wesley earlier in the season.
Right. Or a shot collar, you'll see a dog in the yard that has no fence and be like, oh, he knows not to go over there. Yeah.
Yeah. So of course, like they're all in there, and Gwen is the one that the Loom have been after because she doesn't quite belong in this timeline anymore, and so there's a whole bit where the Loom is chasing them around, and classic cartoon of oh no, run away.
Yeah, exactly.
Back on Voyager, Janeway works with Crusher and the Doctor, and they basically fabricate a Valnakat shuttle and fly down to the surface. Hilariously, we get a moment of Wesley being like, I haven't flown anything in a really long time.
Right. But he did it all the time. He was the wonder child.
Yeah.
He, one thing in it, and it's not that I didn't notice it before this episode, but, I've met Will Wheaton a couple times in person, and then we were just watching, we were winding down watching Big Bang Theory, and he was a frequent guest star on that show. He's got one of those kind of weird beards that I just like. It's kind of patchy, whatever it is. And in this show, it kind of looks like it's very long and flowing, but he's got like little weird parts up here where it's really patchy. So I'm like, it's an interesting, weird like choice to animate it that way. You know what I mean? Because usually when you see someone like they have, this style of, whatever, their hair doesn't really have a lot of personality. Like Chakotay's hair is very like, it just looks like it's a Lego piece. You plug it in and out. But I think that it was weird, but it's like a cool style choice that kind of brings you a little bit more.
It's an interesting stylistic choice to actually deal with the funkiness that is Will Wheaton's beard.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're on their way down to the planet. I do love that because obviously they're back on the Protostar, which has the great little 3D printer that can make vehicles and stuff. That's fantastic. I want one of those. Hell, we all do.
It'd be really cool. But it's also hilarious how they're approaching the planet, and we basically get a kind of a Star Wars moment where the Doctor is changing his voice to pretend to be a Valnakat officer.
Right.
And then completely biffs it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm a doctor, not a Secret Service, not a spy. And it's like, oh boy. I love it when they bring those lines back in because it's hilarious. So, but eventually they land on the planet, and Janeway has a plan, and eventually we find out what it is. But in the beginning, you see Janeway walk into the room with Essentia and like offers to trade herself for the kids.
Unaggressive negotiations.
Yes, unaggressive negotiations. Yes. A hostage exchange, basically. Right. Sensia says, don't really care, shoots her with a phaser, and Janeway falls to the ground.
Yeah, right.
But then pulls a Shatner dramatic death moment.
I can't believe he didn't have his feet in the air. It'd be like, I'm dying and stuff. It's good that when Essentia reached down, she was fiddling with his mobile emitter, that she didn't just snag it. So she obviously didn't know what she was dealing with.
Yeah, a little bit later, she figures out that it is in fact the Doctor playing Janeway, and then he basically rematerializes somewhere else. But in the meantime, Chakotay and Janeway are trying to blow open the prison, and they can't with their phasers. It's too thick. So Janeway ends up using her comm badge as a micro explosive.
Yeah, that
was an odd choice.
That was like making up something new. And I did also see that the away team didn't have any gear, and I didn't see for a while. It didn't look like they had weapons at all.
Wesley said something about not being able to like get any readings. I'm like, where's your tricorder, man?
Yeah, and it didn't look like but they weren't wearing like snazzy jackets or anything. All right, so sorry about that. The brief little interruption. So yeah, the Janeway with the comm badge thing and the no gear is just some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, but eventually they blow a hole open. The Loom also gets released, but it doesn't go after Gwen. It seems to want to just leave.
Yeah, right. And more on that later.
Yeah. But then, all the crew gets together. Wesley is able to basically do a beck and call and bring the ship to them, and then they escape back to Voyager. Yeah. So that's pretty much all that we get. In the beginning of the episode of note, there's a really interesting scene between Chakotay and Janeway where they're kind of reminiscing a little bit about, all of the time they spent on Voyager and
Right.
which is where we get the name of the episode. Basically, you have we have the olds on Voyager coming to save the day. So it's the touch of gray to bring them and save it.
Like the Grateful Dead. Yeah, this is star date year 62000, which makes it 2385, which is exactly when Picard season 1 prequel sequences and the short track Children of Mars take place. Yep. So that is going to factor in pretty heavily, pretty quickly. So yeah, we have a 2-part finale. So I'll roll through. Oh, first of all, rating of the episode. I was 7 out of 10 for this one. I was kind of annoyed with the comm badge explosion thing and the walk, like the magical, like, and I got a phaser in my pocket. I don't know, kind of bugged me.
Yeah, I mean, this one probably 7.5 for me. It's still good. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah.
But it's just there were a couple of moments you're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly. All right, episodes 19 and 20 are Ouroboros, a la Ki-Hing Kwan's character from Loki season 2. That's what it makes me think of. But there's another reference to that. What's the big picture reference to that? I'm forgetting.
Ouroboros has to do with it's a geometric shape that you can follow one side and end up on both inside and outside. So if you remember if I'm remembering this correctly, like it's in Endgame, that shape that Tony is using for the time.
Oh, I got
that. If I'm remembering correctly, that is an Ouroboros. So it's basically like we're ending up in the same. We're ending up where we wanted to be, but we did a different way to get there.
Gotcha. Different way to get there. I like it. Cool. All right. A desperate Essentia launches an all-out attack on the Federation that will destroy subspace. Don't want to do that. While Wesley and the cadets try to correct the timeline. And while the cadets are fighting Essentia in the battle to control Solom and their future, a sudden invasion by a destructive species complicates their end game. Ooh, end game. Keep coming back to the end game. Oh my goodness. All right. So individualized notes. I just wrote, it's time to wrap this shit up. And pretty much they did. So, yeah, things are looking, pretty bad. Things are looking crappy and Essentia is not taking it well. I wrote, the people are revolting, and I quoted History of the World Part 1. I know the peasants are revolting. Yeah, they stink on ice. No, probably Mel Brooks. Yep. That was what made me think of. I noted the Loki connection, and then thank you for breaking me through the Ouroboros thing. But yeah, Wesley says, with these, they have the big MacGuffin antenna super complex that's opening up holes in space. That means that they can destroy things going across 3 sectors. But he said, but also this will help me fix everything. So we got to do this. So we got a great montage. They're getting all the pieces in place. And I'm like, sorry, montage is just, it's the rule. But we're going to split the crew in 2 because a crew has to beam down. So it's, Gwendala and Dahl and I think Jankum. And Rock says, I love you. And Gwendala's like, oh, I love you back. And I'm like, that's kind of cute. I like that. Is enduring. But we get this great space battles. The 2 ships are going at all the attacking. Or they have those like weird like space station-y things like they had around Cardassia at the end of Deep Space Nine, those orbital weapons platforms. Yep. That was awesome. I'm particularly impressed by how they take advantage of, and they've done it throughout the series, of taking advantage of not having budgetary requirements as far as doing space battles and things related to space, like all the ships that we saw in the season 1 finale, when there was the big blowout of, you saw ships going across all of TNG and DS9 and Voyager and new stuff too, and stuff from Star Trek Online as well. So
some of it has to do with, I don't know how much they did it in Prodigy, but I know that in Picard, what they have been doing is they have been exporting the physical, the digital models from Star Trek Online and just lighting them a little differently and using them. So when you're watching Picard, especially seasons 1 and 2, especially 2 in the background, those are Star Trek Online ships, like the actual digital files. That's what that is. Those are not good. Those are not ILM built or anything. Those are from Thomas Maroney over at Star Trek
which makes it so much easier to do it. So so that's good. So the gang, they're all standing around 4 computers. Is Rock and Wesley and who else is in the brain trust where they're all figuring out the
it's Rock, Zero, Majel.
Oh, there you go.
Um,
And they're figuring out that, I
West.
do like, it's so complicated. Like, we got to get it back to this point. And I'm like, this has got to be blowing kids' minds. Like, wait, like I can't keep up. But what's nice is that they flip that around and they say, no, it doesn't really matter if it goes at this exact time. What matters is that we just get it back to somewhere in the past so that it can be found. Doesn't matter how it lands.
Yeah,
there.
we don't know when it landed anyway,
Yeah.
so it just has to be
Right.
sometime before
Yeah.
we
So,
know
yeah.
that they
Right.
saw it.
Which they know because they know it was an exact. They know the date it happened, or they can keep track of it that way.
Yeah.
So back on the planet, we get our guys get to the top of the thing. We get some punch out time. So Essentia and Gwendal are having their big punch up, which lasts for a good portion of things. Murph takes on the General Grievous character, which is a great. And at the end of it, it's a longer sequence and he beats him, but they do the classic, oh, we both fell off a ledge. And then everybody else is like, oh my God, what's going on? You see Murph throws his little globby hand up, and then he took the General Grievous's head as a trophy, which I thought was a little dark, but okay. But he's like, clunk.
That was pretty funny. You see
But it was good
Dreadnought's
stuff, yeah.
head first, lit up eyeballs. You're like, oh, great, and then just thunk.
He got it.
He's done.
So we get a multiverse name drop, which I love because the Ouroboros and, like you said, Endgame, and think about Loki season 2. But I love Dahl. He does the Doc Brown on the clock tower from the first Back to the Future, where he's putting the two connections together at the last moment, which connects the cable and then it sends things so they can create
They also turn off all the other wormholes, so those ships that were like we saw when getting to Earth, they all get like chopped in half, or they don't get to where we're going. So
exactly. So Gwendal's on the roast, but her people come up and they're beaming her good vibes, and we get I am one with the Force, and she becomes all the Jedi, and then she flips it around and finally wins the punch up with the Sensia, which saw it coming, but I think they did it in a good way.
Yeah.
And where everything is poised, we're gonna do everything, and then the damn space bears show up. So the loom shows up, and as the episode ends, we know that now it just looks like everybody's gonna get gobbled up. So yes, to be concluded. That was the end of part 1. So 9 out of 10 for me. The episode it's certainly packed with cliches, but keeping in mind the source material and the desired audience, it's kind of okay. I did love the nods and the winks to the Star Wars and the Marvel stuff. And it pulled out a decent first half of a season or a series finale, really. So yeah, I 9 out of 10 for me.
Yep, right about there.
Yep. All right, so the end. I wrote the final countdown. Na 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 na. Everybody knows that one. But they go full MCU right at the end because it's the big blue sky hole. It's the third act of any Marvel movie. But the big blue sky hole is what we need to do to get the mission done. So big set piece of the space fight as the ships are, as I said, they're up there fighting, and they make a plan. So once they get through, the ships have to go side by side, and they got to beam Chakotay off at the last minute so that the ship can fly into the breach and blah blah blah. Get a great bit where the whales come back in, the humpback whales come back in, the citation ops to save the day when the nav system is fritzing out. That was pretty cool. And this was, I didn't note the first one, but this was the second one for the kind of the sad goodbye between holographic Janeway and Chuckles. You could tell that they really have a relationship because they were together, just two of them on that planet for 10 years. And in the first sad chat they were having, she was saying, well, I'm going to, you're going to have to blank my program so that I can fulfill my part in the past bit. And lo and behold, the doctor pipes in from over on Voyager, says, you know what? I figured out how to save your program. We'll download you, and then off you go.
Yeah, we had the right, unlike at the end of season 1, we have the correct hardware to upload your program.
They didn't have it. So they did that, and then she resets herself and deactivates, and she's gone. So she knows that she's going to have to, when she boots up again, she has to have a blank memory. So when the kids are all ready to finally beam off Protostar, Dahl takes off his Protostar special comm badge. He sets it down on the little flat surface at the front of the bridge because I thought that was a nice, beautiful touch, like Samuel Clemens setting his pocket watch out at the end of Time Zero 2, which is which we'll actually be talking about pretty quickly here because that's the beginning of season 6 of TNG. I thought that was a very sweet and endearing montage recap of the series, kind of tugging at the heartstrings, all the moments these kids have been through together. It was great.
Yeah. It was really interesting how we had like the echoes of the ship, and Wesley was like, "That's the timeline reintegrating." It's like that's a nice little cool touch, and then
kind of like remember at the end of Stormfront Part 2 in Enterprise with Daniels, he and Archer standing there, and you're watching history spin around them.
Yeah,
and
the visuals reminded me of all good things as well with the various Enterprises.
Yeah, I know. I think they absolutely did a great bit. So then they're gone. The mission is done, and they're off. They're going to be headed back to Earth. So first and foremost, we get a connection with Wesley going to visit Beverly, and she walks him into the next room. And off camera, you hear the voice of a babbling baby, which is of course Jack Crusher, Picard's son, that we meet as an adult in Picard season 3. So that was awesome. Nice connectivity. So back at Earth, Chakotay gets a new uniform. It's the uniform that Janeway was wearing. And again, I'm so weirded out by like Janeway's Vice Admiral badge, very accurate to the TV show. The pips that all the other officers have, way weirdly spaced out. They're like beep, 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 beep. It was kind of driving me nuts.
Yep.
But anyway, Janeway says, "You know what? I'm taking my early retirement. I'm going to go back. I'm going to live on a farm." So it's kind of like Picard at the vineyard, but she's gonna do.
It's always interesting how when Starfleet people retire, they seem to go to farms.
Yeah, it's peaceful. It's actually it's the complete opposite of living in space. You want to have your feet on the ground. Mm-hmm. Nice science class with my associate, Dr. Erin McDonald, who I've met several times, including on the cruise. I have a picture of her and April and myself and Eugene Cordero from the trivia that we went on the cruise earlier this year. She's very, very nice. But yeah, she's was a science consultant over on Star Trek Discovery, and she had an appearance last season. And then she's back again. And she has a local in Colorado. She has a vendor, Cynic Studios, that made that uniform for her that she wore when she was on the cruise. I thought that was pretty cool. Before we had managed to have it made by our friends at Cosmar, which I've not gotten one yet. I've really got to get around.
Not yet. It's definitely one that
I'm kind of on the short list of doing so many uniforms, but that was kind of one of the last ones I wanted to get. So we'll see. The kids are back on campus. They're hanging out, chatting, figuring out what they're going to do. And time runs out. Bam! They look up, and the CNN of the day is scrolling. Synthesoids attack Mars, and we're right back in Picard season 1. We're back on the short tracks, and stuff is going nuts. So you see a shuttle landing on Janeway's property, and it's Chakotay saying, "Hey, you've been recalled. There's been this big attack," and Janeway ends up in a Jedi Council briefing session where she's wearing another damn uniform. She's now in the Picard season 1 flashback flag officer uniform, but the uniforms that the other Starfleet officers have been wearing this whole time, non-flag officers are still wearing theirs. So I don't know. I just don't know.
This particular era of Star Trek has been fast and loose when it comes to uniform content.
And we're not done. Yeah, we're not done yet because, even so far we had the Protostar only uniform, which Chakotay and the Birdman, Drake, wore, and his unnamed crew. You had the Starfleet regular uniform that you saw Janeway and a crew wearing the Prometheus, and then they wore them obviously on Voyager A, which Chakotay is currently wearing, so that's still current. And then we've now integrated into it's very popular amongst cosplayers, the 2385 uniform, which you see Picard and Raffi wear in those flashbacks and of this day, and now Jellicoe's wearing it, and Janeway's wearing it, and a handful of other officers, but we're not done with uniforms yet. But like I said, it's like 5 different uniforms and 3 different badge designs. Yet the Monster Maroon was the only uniform for like 80 years between the end of the movies and TNG. So I don't know. Yeah, Janeway, or excuse me, Jellicoe does have kind of a throwaway line to try to explain it. He said, "Well, we haven't even been able to. We don't have enough power to upgrade comm badges across half a fleet." Like that was just. I know you're trying to explain it, but I'm just not buying it.
It was one of those like I'm attempting to explain this, and it's like, no.
It kind of felt flat.
I appreciate the attempt,
right?
But akin to like some other attempts where it's just. I don't mind technobabble. I love technobabble, and I don't mind retcons to an extent.
Right.
But there are some things that you just can't explain.
You can't. Yeah, it's kind of
sometimes it's just better to leave it alone.
And this is where, sadly, so now we're down to basically the last act of the episode. And this is where things go a little off the rail for me. So Janeway is peeved that the whole meeting that Jellicoe is having is like, we've got to lock things down. We're halting the mission the mission to save the Romulans because we have to pull in our defenses because we have this new enemy. And she's like, what about exploration? What about this? And he's like, we just can't do it. And she says, well, I'm taking matters in my own hands, which wouldn't happen. But she then goes to the kids, and with Chakotay, they all take a walk up to the newly completed Protostar official
class.
Protostar class USS Prodigy, exactly. And they say, you know what? We're giving you kids this ship. And she pulls out a thing, and they each an ensign's pip for each one of them. He said, you're all commissioned officers now. You're going to get the field commission. You're going to get this ship. Here's hologram Janeway. She's now an emergency command hologram, but she doesn't have pips the way the Doctor did when he imagined himself as that. Yes. Back on, because there was a couple of episodes that they dabbled with that. So, and that's a big problem, but the other thing that sticks to me, so we have the handoff happens, and between Dal and Gwen, he says, you know what? Everything has told me this whole time that you're the one who needs to be the captain. And they have the side-by-side chairs just like on Voyager. But he said, you're going to be the captain. But they're all ensigns. So whatever. But they cut to the parting shot. Now these kids have another set of uniforms. What the hell is going on? If this was the real world and it was, you were in the Navy and you had to get a new set of uniforms every other episode or a couple times a year, you go broke trying to be like, I got to get this bits and bobs and I got to change my badge and this and that. And
yep.
It's a good thing everything comes out of replicators, but like Jellicoe says, even the replicators can't keep up. So
apparently
it's a grand moment, but I 100% do not feel like Janeway could grab a brand new ship on her own and just give it to these kids and be like I was describing to you.
Well, they had
you and I were talking about yesterday.
They had some hand wavium of
yeah.
They were gonna just decommission it, mothball it, and so she pulled in some favors to be like, hey, can I use this for something else?
So it's a training ship, but I'm like, it's a way, like I was telling you yesterday when we were talking, it's a way Wayne's at the end of Wade's World, the Scooby-Doo ending, it's too silly. It's too silly for what we might call a serious Star Trek show, if there is such a thing, where this kind of nudges this a little too firmly into, well, this is a kid show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's just, you can't really, it's a great ending for kids, but for adults, it's kind of like, well, I've been watching Star Trek for, almost 40 years, and this is just not something that would, even though Star Trek is very loosey-goosey when you compare it to a modern Earth military of some kind, but they're not giving a bunch of friggin' teenagers their own brand new ship and being like, okay, this hologram can be in charge, good luck. It's just too weird for me. Oh, but yeah, in the end of it, I gave that a markdown, but not by much, because you know what?
No.
It's still great. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. I did love how they tied everything kind of up in a bow, and they tied it back to the Mars's incident from Picard and then from the short track. But the uniform thing just drives me nuts. They go through, there are 4 different styles of uniforms featured in this episode, from Chakotay is still wearing the Prodigy thing, I think. With that badge, no, he switched his badge, so the Prodigy badge went away, but Dal still left one on the ship. And then there's the uniform they're wearing on Voyager. Then Janeway goes back and changes into the Picard season 1 flashback one, and then the kids have one. So that's four different styles of uniform in one
and
episode.
then they're still wearing the cadet uniform, and then they switch to their
right. So that's 5. So yeah,
there's a lot of uniforms.
It's too much. As a cosplayer, it's too much. And as someone who collected uniforms for a number of years, I have a closet full of them, but it's too much to be all within one time period. So, but again, that's,
like a couple months of each other.
Yeah. Or weeks or days. Exactly. So, in the final analysis, it's a great show. It's a great show to show your kids, dear listeners, or young kids in your families, nieces, nephews, whomever. It's not a bad one to just show anyone who's never seen Star Trek before, because it's, or someone who enjoys because of something like Clone Wars or the MCU, that they enjoy a multiversal time travel story, because that's the from start to finish, the entire series has to do with time travel this, and we found this, and kids proving themselves and doing this thing, and brings in elements of Star Trek that people like you and I can appreciate, kind of the same way that Lower Decks does, at the opposite end of the spectrum, because that's, it's an Adult Swim kind of cartoon.
Yeah, and that's more tongue in cheek.
Yeah, and they sneak in a lot of Star Trekky jokes that people like you and I can enjoy. And this is always the argument I had with Oxtra. I said, I really do feel like somebody can just watch it and enjoy it and not have to know anything about Star Trek, but people like you and I can appreciate it on a different plane. So you kind of get 2 levels to it. So that's kind of the same with this. We can appreciate, particularly people who love Voyager, which it's funny. I was on Threads the other day, and somebody that I follow said, it's funny. I feel like most all of the online conversations I hear about Star Trek are about Voyager. Voyager has just this massive fan base, I think, because it came along at this exact right time that network TV was still a thing. The cast was younger than the TNG cast, so maybe in a lot of ways it was a little bit more accessible. I think it for a lot of millennials in particular, I think Voyager really slaps. So this is really a cousin to that, and a chance for those millennial kids to get into this. I think maybe that's why it's turned out to be so popular. So, but yeah, that's a wrap on Prodigy. What are your thoughts on the show continuing? I mean, what's your vibe? We know it's popular, but will it live again?
I mean, I wouldn't mind for it to continue. I mean, it's got good characters. It's had solid writing, so I would love to see more of that. I would also prefer them to keep them away from Starfleet, because I'm not quiet about the fact that I don't like the direction that they took Starfleet in Picard season 1, and that's what they would have to do.
Yeah,
so
kind of
just not touch that.
Kind of nasty Starfleet in a lot of ways.
It's not a good look. It's not a good thing. That's all I'll say about that. So if they were to do that, that's what I would do. But the way that they ended the season, specifically with like the 5-minute recap flashback thing, I don't know that the plan is to get another one.
Yeah, it could just be
because of the way that sequence ran.
Yeah,
it's possible if we Netflix and other studios aren't above like hearing that people want things and then doing it. But they did do this in such a way that it is wrapped up similarly to how if you're familiar with the sci-fi show Expanse, there's 3 more books in that they teed up in the final season. But they also wrapped it up in a way that they don't have to continue. So that's kind of what it feels here. It's like a tee it up. It's like, well, we could if we're given the opportunity, but we don't have to. We put a nice little bow on it. And so they could, but because of how it ended and because of just how things work and how much things cost,
yeah,
I mean, animation does cost quite a bit less than live action nowadays,
right,
because of the absolute insanity that they spend on these things rather than the dumpster diving that they used to do.
Yeah, right.
But unfortunately, I don't predict another season of Prodigy. I'd love for there to be, but I'm going to be Mr. Pessimist here and just be like, I don't think so.
That's fair. If it was something to ride again, in some ways I could see it just kind of not be a priority, because bringing it back is not independent of, or not dependent on the fact that, well, these kids have all aged out of these roles and they can't be young anymore. You can bring it back in 10 years, 15 years, 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is. If all the people were still around, or recast in a voice sounds a little bit different, but it's still the same character. So you're right. It's a possibility, but it's nice that they did send them off into the sunset, and then your imagination can just fill in the gap. So that's not. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we
not
might
a bad
get
thing.
it. We'll probably. My guess is a continuation would probably be like a comic line or something.
Yeah,
which I think that's the most we're going to get is novels and comic books.
Right, and in the comic book world of Star Trek is very strong. IDW has the license; they do a lot. They do a lot of specials here and there. So yeah, you're right. A Prodigy character slipped into an annual or an anniversary special. I could see it happening.
Or maybe they'll continue doing them in like video games, because there was a Prodigy video game, which was actually
which I had. Game. Yeah, that's what I had, and actually April and I we had somebody gift it to the network, and April and I played it a little bit, and I thought it was pretty fun. Yeah, I know Todd's. My
brother and I played it and beat it, and it's a decent story. I liked it.
Yeah. I like it. Well, I may have to go back and revisit. Well, anyway, that's the show. That's that show, not our show. We're still going. But it's all available on Netflix, which most people have anyway. It's a worthy watch. It's 2 seasons of 20 episodes each, and the episodes are 22 minutes. So you can knock it out in a couple of weeks watching it.
Enjoy the awesomeness.
Like it. It's fun. And now that it's all the way done, and it has been all the way done since July, it's just taken us this long to get around. So yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into part 3 of 4 of the 5th season of Star Trek Voyager. So we've got 6 that we're doing this time, but we have one of them is a double. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We still have 6. So really it's 7 because we go 6, 7, 6, 7 doing a season because they're 26. So this one's a little bit of a cheat, but I'll jump in. With episode 14, which is Bliss, director's Cliff Bowl, story by Bill Prady, who's not a name that I know, so that might be a spec script. Robert Doherty doing the teleplay from February of 99. A large organism telepathically deceives the Voyager crew into flying into its digestive chamber. Ouch!
Giant that sounds bad. Sarlacc in space.
It sounds bad. And we have a guest actor of a gentleman named Morgan Dean Shepard, who played Ira Graves, who was a mentor of Noonien Sung in the season 2 episode of TNG, which was called not Measure Man, because that's the one.
Why the Schizoid Man?
The Schizoid Man. It was a man, where, yes, this character, Ira Graves, when he dies, he manages to dump his personality into Data, but this guy's kind of an asshole, so the crew figures out pretty quickly that it's not Data. But yeah, great actor. Loved his role.
I believe he also plays the Warden in Star Trek 6 on Rura Penthe.
Absolutely correct. On the surface, nothing can survive. That dude, yeah. It's kind of a fun episode. This plays heavily on 7 of 9, which is not surprising. They do that in a lot of episodes because she becomes the star of the show.
For whatever reason, they figured out how to write for her interestingly, and they just decided that they couldn't write for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Voyager is unfortunately like any show, they're power players for characters, and there are others that aren't so much. But that's a topic of protracted discussion. But it's 7, and then actress Scarlett Palmer's, who plays Naomi Wildman, who they really work on developing a friendship between the two of them. That would be a fun callback if Legacy ever becomes a show, is to have that actress return in that role. Because she's obviously grown since so much time has passed by. I think that would be super cool. But I think this is kind of funny because for the first half of the show, the crew thinks they found a magical wormhole that's going to take them directly to Earth. And it also lets them talk to Earth in real time. So everybody starts talking to people at home, and Chakotay's like, I got a job at Starfleet Academy, and Tom's like, I got a job as a test pilot at a racing something or other in Australia, and blah, blah. So everybody's making plans. But of course, 7 is like, well, I don't, I mean, in her own way, she says, well, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm not really from Earth, and so I don't know why people are so jazzed up. And she starts to get suspicious, and the pitcher plant figure out she's starting to be suspicious. So then the Voyager crew wants to put her on ice, and that's when Mark Allen Shepard's character, or it's not Mark Allen Shepard because that was Morn. I've already forgotten the guy's name. The guy that we were talking about earlier, the actor.
Yep.
Shows up and he says, he's Ahab and this thing is his whale. He says, I've been hunting this thing and stuck inside it and blah, blah, blah. So he works with Seven and Naomi to get out. And they have a couple of false starts where they think they've escaped, but they haven't, because this thing knocks the crew out, and when it knocks them out, it kind of eats them. So obviously, eventually, we get out of there. But our Ahab says our Ahab can't quit, so he stays inside. He's going to continue to fight the thing while our crew has escaped.
Yeah,
so
he's trying to kill it.
Yeah,
which I mean, even on him, it's a menace. But
it is. It's a huge menace. Anything that would happen into it. So I thought it was a cool episode. I liked seeing, kind of, because when the whole thing is an imagination, you see, what the true thoughts and desires of our people would be like. Hey, if I was back on Earth, if I could do anything I wanted, it would be X. And so, so since it's all happening in their own imaginations, or they're running around saying it like, that that's kind of their fondest desire. So that's kind of interesting. Oh, Janeway has, and the man I was engaged to, his marriage didn't work out. So now he wants to get back together. It's like, back then, now you're starting to think maybe this is not real, because this doesn't, I'm sure that kind of thing happens. It was a little convenient.
Yeah, so it does happen, but it was definitely one of those. Seems suspicious.
I don't know how I feel about that. It doesn't really sound quite right. So yeah, I thought it was an all right episode. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty good. The interesting thing is, I think that I heard a fan series do a similar story before I watched this episode.
Okay.
So when I watched this episode, I was like, this seems really familiar. Now,
you're right.
Obviously, the fan episode was probably pulling from this, but
potentially, yeah.
It was kind of funny, where I was like, huh.
Yeah, right.
But it's a solid episode. There's good interaction between Seven and Naomi, and
agreed. That, so. All right. Well, we have our. It was funny because it was for Feb Sweeps. We had a 2-parter. That's all yours, Peter. Go ahead.
All right. So in February, starting in the 17th of 1999, we had Dark Frontier. Directed by Cliff Bull for part 1 and Terry Wendell for part 2, written by Brandon Braga and Joe Minoski. So it's going to be intense.
They're the big dogs.
Yep. So Janeway plans to steal a transwarp coil from a disabled Borg ship to shorten their journey home. 709 experiences memories of her past just before she and her parents are assimilated and plans to rejoin the Borg collective. The Borg Queen, in part 2, tells 709 that she will leave her individuality intact so the Borg can study her memories and use her to help them assimilate humanity. I believe this is the first time the Borg Queen appears.
It is, yeah, and it's Susanna Thompson instead of Alice Krige, who does return for the series finale Endgame. So yeah, but much like, and I'm trying to now, because it was a week ago I watched this. I'm trying to remember if this is the first time that we get. No, that might be when we get to the season 6 finale, where you have the little Borg space like town, which my ex-wife.
Yeah, that's later. That's
Borgton. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, she dubbed it Borgton, but yeah, that was. I didn't know. We would have been watching the show together at this point, but yeah, this. It's a great episode. It's it's split into halves because it's bookended by. It has a great cold open where they're facing a Borg ship and they're trying to lure it in, and then Harry beams the torpedo directly into the ship and blows it up from the inside. That was a good trick. But yeah, that's how they figure out that even though the junk that they salvage is non-operational, they said, well, if we can find another ship and steal a transwarp coil, we can find a way to put it in the ship, and it won't be like Timeless, where we go into a slipstream and crash a ship. So the focus all becomes that, but then Janeway kind of forces Seven to read all of her parents' logs, and so it turns into a big flashback of her when she was 6 and her parents, who are just the dumbest people that I can possibly imagine. Oh my God, her parents are so dumb. Oh, the Borg are so great. We want to find all about them. I'm like, No, you fucking don't. Siri, just, turn
Yeah.
around. Yeah, exactly. Just turn around and go home. You know what I mean? Don't you and your 6-year-old daughter get, consumed by a hostile species. They're so excited that, they can
it's
follow
akin
them
to
around.
like, hey, we're anthropologists and we're going to go study a cannibal tribe and we're going to bring our children with us. This is
Yeah,
dumb.
exactly. Yeah, right. It's just it's so the Hansons are so dumb, and obviously it factors into the plot overall because that's why 7 of 9 is who she is. But it's just ridiculous. Talk about is there no child protective services in the 24th century? Because somebody should have yanked this kid right out of there when they went
Being
to
on
that
a
last
science
starbase.
ship and exploring things, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that
Sure.
once your subject matter becomes, lethal.
Right. It's not. I really want to discover what the effects are of flying around randomly in the Klingon Empire without proper documentation. Well, you'd find out pretty quick. Yeah. So, So they did.
I want to do a socio-political examination of the Cardassian Union in an unarmed shuttle.
That sounds great. Maybe I'll fly right up to one of their colonies, maybe one of their labor camps, and just plump down and take notes. So yeah, it's kind of like your guidebook to Star Trek of just the dumbass things that you can do because they're in the Alpha Quadrant. They end up getting sucked into the Delta Quadrant. This obviously all happened to pass and they end up crashing. So, but yeah, at one point, the Borg Queen manipulates Seven from afar and says, "I'll let Voyager live, and they can even have their coil or whatever, but you stay with me." And so she makes she tries to get herself out of the away team, but Janeway makes her go. And then at the last moment, she says, "I'm staying. I want to rejoin the collective." So, and of course that doesn't sit well with Janeway. So they spend, all part 2
trying to get her back.
Trying to get her back, which they put the transwarp coil in the Delta Flyer, and they do find her. And there's a spectacular, the last couple of acts of part 2 where they're getting her back and all this, in the transwarp hub. And it looks, they fire a torpedo at a certain thing and blah, blah, blah. And it makes the Borg ship come out of the transwarp hub in pieces. And so you're like, oh, we killed the Borg Queen.
They collapse the end of the transwarp tunnel. And so then basically a la Stargate, it kind of impacts on the end of the wormhole and then returns to normal space.
And much like, any supervillain in a comic book, you're like, well, we killed the Borg Queen this time, but she's going to be bad. It's like, it's like Dr. Doom or Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin. He's going to come back.
It's Dr. Claw.
Yeah, it's Dr. Claw, exactly. So, but yeah, this was a full 2-parter. So it aired on one night, stem to stern. So it was like a 90-minute episode. I remember watching it. And I like it. It's nice to have that solid backstory on all of Seven's origin because we got a piece of it in season 4 in the episode The Raven, where they entered.
They found the ship.
They found the ship because Seven was getting a homing beacon and went and visited the ship, and it was all wrecked up, and you got to learn that much. And even this, you realize that the Borg Queen, one of her adjuncts, is her dad, her Borgified dad. So that's kind of a bummer because you realize that he dies too. But no, I thought it was good.
Maybe.
Yeah,
it's not clear.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but you know what? The Borg Queen consciousness bounces between bodies, which she made clear in First Contact because she's but then again she somehow regenerates in the series finale in that same body. It's best if you don't think about it too much, but no, I think they did well. I thought it was a fun episode, the way that it was done. Nice to get that backstory and in a big, and hopefully it did well for him on sweeps because it was big and exciting.
Yep, it's a great episode. I enjoy it. There's the whole funny montage where they're trying to like train and we're all dead. Computer freeze program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're doing a 2 holodeck thing. They're like computer freeze both holodecks because one holodeck was the Voyager and the other one was them running around on this cube. So, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, episode 17 is The Disease. It's a lot more than it's a disease. It's a lot more fun than it sounds. Trust me. David Livingston handling the directing. We have the story by Ken Biller and teleplay by Michael Taylor. So again, Feb 24/99, a day after my 23rd birthday. My goodness. Kim finds love at last and again when the crew encounters a Varro generational ship that needs assistance repairing his warp drive. And the woman who played the female lead, very exotic looking woman, I'm going to click on the link here. who I checked her out afterwards. I'm like, oh my god, she's a handsome woman. But I believe, is from overseas and didn't really have much. Musetta Vander is her name from. Oh, she was in one of the Mortal Kombat movies. She's from South Africa, so kind of like Alice Krieger.
Cool.
But very. I hate to use the word handsome woman because it sounds like I'm being disparaging, but I'm really not. But really, very, very. I don't know. You know the word I'm trying to. I don't want to say pretty. Now I'm sounding weird, but yes, I admired her certainly at the time. But this was kind of a kooky episode because you had Kim, who's Mr. Nothing really works out for me.
He's kind of Geordie for Voyager.
Yeah, he's kind of Dudley Do Right. He never steps out of he never takes a misstep. Yet he's the forever ensign, which is the source of 11 billion memes on the internet of why he can never get promoted. But in this, he's carrying on with this woman, and as a result, this race, when they bond with each other, they have this electrochemical effect that he shimmers and shines, all this different stuff, and so he's not able to hide that while he's trying to keep the relationship under wraps. Because I do like how when he's confronted by Janeway, she said there's a reason why the relationship manual for Starfleet officers is 3 centimeters thick, and you have to have written permission to engage in romantic relations with an alien species. Guess Kirk didn't have that. Right. Or he wrote his own because he was his own commanding officer. He was like, he writes himself a note. I can hook up with Green Chick. Signed, Jim Kirk.
Well, I mean, Kirk did it for reasons. This was just a romantic thing. Kirk was trying to manipulate people to make sure the ship didn't blow up.
Always very strategic when he was seducing some green woman or whatever.
Yes.
Or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there were like 2 instances that weren't strategic, but primarily he was strategic. Kim, on the other hand, this is just puppy dog eyes.
Yeah. And when he's confronted with it, he doesn't back down. Like, he has this real kind of emotional showdown with Janeway where, and he gets a reprimand, which is like, that's okay. It's not like Tom Paris, who lost to Pip and had to spend a month in jail, though that probably could have been.
I mean, a reprimand on your record isn't a good thing because that sticks around.
Exactly.
So
that's true. But yeah, it was nice to have the writers give Kim something to do. And at the end of it, the B plot of it is that, well, this woman was also part of this rebel faction that wanted to get away from this generational ship, and they wanted to, because they had been traveling for centuries with the intention of going somewhere, and it was a bunch of little nodules all stuck together in a big, like, cigar-shaped something. Yeah. And at the end of it, this rebel faction succeeds in breaking off some of these, and they're going to go off to do their own thing. The guy who plays the rather standoffish captain or basically president of their community. His name is Charles Rocket, and he was one of the second generation of performers on Saturday Night Live in the early 1980s. Oh. So like between the original cast and like the Eddie Murphy cast and the people moving forward, he was on there briefly. He was got fired from the show for dropping an F-bomb live on air in a skit. So that was his claim to fame with SNL.
Well, none of those in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, some years after this, he committed suicide, so he's no longer with us. But I always thought he was a talented performer. But yeah, this guy, it was kind of like, where do you get off? Because he was really lippy to Janeway, where the Voyager people were helping them fix their warp drive for free, and she was like, "Well, I told you I didn't want you to get in." But like, the guy was a real jerk for no reason. But you know what? Starfleet people are really nice, and so they just still put up with it because Starfleet always wants to help, and isn't that
Starfleet always wants to help? But Starfleet is also very nosy, so I can understand him being a little snippy on something.
Yeah, and they probably didn't want to dig too deep and find out that there was this faction of people that wanted to leave their ship. So nice story. Yeah, a nice story. In essence, kind of low stakes. Not like Kim's life was ever in danger, but it was nice to see him, have some character development. So I kind of did like that. So good stuff. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It's not one of my favorites. It's just, I mean, for me, it was just kind of like, all right, interesting.
Yeah.
It did feel a little bit like Kim was getting manipulated a bit to help them.
Help the rebels, the rebel faction.
And I'm not really, I'm never a fan when people use romance to manipulate other people. I think it's very low.
Well, it's very much a cliche.
It's a cliche.
It's a cliche in life in general,
part
but
of
on
it is
TV,
it's a real thing, and so I don't
very
like
much
it.
so.
So I don't like it when it's like, oh, we're going to use that. It's like, that's
I
kind
know.
of dirty.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
so I think for me that was that was a little bit of the turnoff. It was just like,
that is perfectly fair. All right, next one's yours. Go for it.
All right, episode 18. This one threw me for a loop when I first saw it.
Big time, yeah. This one had a hook that really delivers.
This episode is really laid out well. So if you haven't picked up on it, it's episode 18, Course Oblivion, directed by Anson Williams, story by Brian Fuller and Nick Sagan, teleplay by Nick Sagan, aired on March 3rd of 99. In the beginning of the episode, B'Elanna Torres and Paris get married. But the crew discover they aren't who they think they are, and while they are trying to resolve why subspace radiation is causing them and Voyager to disintegrate.
Oh no!
So this is an amazing callback to previous season's episode, season 4 episode Demon, which
quick sidebar before you get into your analysis. Anson Williams, the director, Potsy from Happy Days.
Oh.
You know, like a lot of actors, including Robert Duncan McNeil, left acting behind to do directing in TV and commercials and things like that. So, and this was not the first. He directed, because I saw a photograph of it recently in an article about Jerry Ryan, The Gift, which was her first full episode of the show on Voyager as a member of the cast. So yeah, interesting. All right, back to you.
Yeah. So this episode. Interestingly, this is another one of those episodes that brings back the TNG dress uniform.
Right.
Which you can tell that Janeway's is actually cut for her. I'm not convinced for anybody else.
Yeah, and that dress uniform was, because it was in doing the uniform manual that you and I worked on for SFI not that long ago. There were a couple of different versions of that one. Because when it came out first time, it was very long, and the gold piping was very thick, and then the gold piping became very thin, and it became slightly longer than a waistcoat, but that even varied too. They pulled it back and pulled it back again.
Yeah, so eventually it became just a jacket. Which
exactly.
By the time they get to the version that we see here in Voyager, that's the better version of it.
Right? Yeah, because this is post TNG, and I think 1999 they hadn't quite come out with the dress uniforms that you saw in Star Trek Insurrection.
They had already been designed, I would imagine, but they hadn't been released yet.
Because this style of uniform appears in the fall of 1990. No, it was fall of 1998. Season 6 of DS9, Worf and Dax's wedding. They're wearing these, but with big belts. Which later became the big belts that go with the Admiral's uniform where I know we're way off baseball here, people, but that was the last canonical appearance of this uniform, because this, again, is a simulation. So, and it's Voyager, which they have older uniform styles anyway. That's the hallmark of the series. Yeah, exactly. So,
but it's really interesting where we get a whole wedding ceremony, we first start to see that something's wrong when they're throwing the rice, and
it's going through the deck.
Floor kind of undulates a little bit, and you see the rice fall through to a Jeffries tube down below.
Right. Because Voyager cracked the code of a new type of propulsion drive that they're now going so quickly. They'll be home in 2 years, and it's great. Yeah.
Until we discover that the ship is kind of falling apart, and surprisingly, so are the people.
Yeah, B'Elanna gets sick, and she dies pretty quickly. But then by doing a scan, they figure out that she's one of these biomimetic pools of gel from the Demon episode.
From the Demon planet. Back on
and they figure out that they all are. So morale kind of takes a turn. But Janeway makes a decision to keep going, and things are just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah. Eventually, they do make a decision to try to find a planet that they can all survive on.
Yeah, they find one, but they can't get down to it because there's
the interesting thing is that the only person who's not a mimetic life form is the Doctor, but he is constrained because his emitter and all the emitters on the ship are also created with the same material.
So yeah, so he go, and one by one, people like, I think Chakotay goes next. And then the crew is down to just basically like Janeway plus Neelix.
And
Tuvok
Kim.
is gone, and Kim. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Paris goes. So yeah. But yeah, they do decide Janeway. I think right at the point Janeway finally dies, and I think Seven is still in. Maybe Harry's still in charge. He
Seven
says no.
Kim is still in charge. And
Yeah.
Seven's around.
And he says, we've got to turn around. We've got to find the real Voyager, or we have to get back to the demon planet so that we can survive. And what a heartbreaker, because they're like just at sensor range of finding Voyager, and they're coming at each other. And that's when the ship just completely.
Yeah, and they have to like drop out of warp violently to be able to use their comm array.
And that's when
the ship just disintegrates. Like they managed to get out like a last ditch hail, but and they did also try to create a data buoy. And a data buoy, and that it's not made out of the same material, but it just doesn't survive launch. It just falls apart.
So in essence, at the end of it, nothing that happened in the episode gets remembered by anybody.
Which is interesting, because now we have this possibility of all of these people who have all these other aliens who have interacted with and had positive experiences with the Voyager crew, but not with the Voyager crew that we know.
Right, exactly. So so you could be on some ship and you're like, we bumped into you guys like 9 months ago. What are you doing back here? I thought you were going
awesome.
that way.
What are you doing here?
We're just going in circles. Yeah, exactly. Or it could be somebody they slugged it out with and barely survived.
Right.
And like, hope we don't run into them again. Kind of like the Krenim in the Kess episode versus the Year of Hell. You know what I mean? So, it was a heartbreaker. I mean, it was a dead giveaway for sharp-eyed fans like Peter and I, that during the wedding ceremony, Tom has 2 pips on his collar, where we know our Tom only has 1.
When I was watching the first time, I was super confused, because I was like, why has he got 2 pips? What's going on here?
And especially in a show that has been known to make errors with that kind of stuff, because when the show started, Tuvok had the pips of a lieutenant commander, but he was only a lieutenant. So about 5 or 10 episodes in, they finally took that other pip away. Tom had 2 solid pips when the show started, but they changed it to 1 and 1 and 1/2. So, but again, nitpicker stuff that shouldn't really detract from your enjoyment of the show, but it always does. It's just like how in Strange New Worlds, the rank stripe ing on that show is total garbage and drives me insane, because none of it matches up. But I try not to let it disrupt my enjoying the show. But this was a great episode. But it was very sad. I was really super bummed out.
Yeah.
It
tugs at your heartstrings, but it's really, really well done. It's a great episode.
Totally agreed. Well, dovetailing into an episode that's really not well done, and on one that Jen, who was one of our former collaborators here on the show, I know that she was not a fan of this episode because it came up once or twice. Episode 19 is The Fight. Winrich Colby, Heritage Director, directs this episode. Taylor and Minosky do the writing and the teleplay, so it has all of the ingredients of being a great episode.
For a great episode, and yet,
it was from March of 99. Chakotay lays in sickbay as he attempts to communicate with aliens through hallucinations. It's a Kuchimoya 101 all over again.
It's a Kuchimoya, but also not. It's very, I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah. It just doesn't really click. So it's a bottle show for the most part. It's a very standard. It's one of the things just Trek in general can fall back on, like we've got this weird alien and they're doing this thing and that thing, and at the end of the day we're able to figure out how to communicate with them. But it's also really framed around Chakotay's interest in boxing and his holodeck program he has where they're bringing back actor Ray Walston for his final appearance as Boothby. But they frame a whole sequence around it that he's a prize fighter and he's having hallucinations about it, and Tom Paris is his ring man, and Booth. It's just again, in the old days, they had a 9-month season where they had to fill 26 episodes. Where, these days, seasons have 10 episodes, which run 10 weeks. 8 or 10 weeks, so they might double up here or there. Does that result in episodes like this that are just they're filler and they're duffers, and you're like, okay, fine, we'll let it go? Absolutely. But this is what we're dealing with right now, talking about this one. You know what I mean? So yeah, there wasn't really anything in this episode that worked for me. I don't think it gave us any great character development for anyone. So it's not like, oh, this was a great
Really.
Chakotay episode because we learned X, Y, and Z about the character.
It was an attempt to be a Chakotay episode, and it just didn't really work.
Yeah, there was just no. It just really was not.
Brought in like hallucinations of, I think it was his father.
No,
or was it his grandfather?
It was his grandfather. And now that you mention, his grandfather, same Native American actor that played Anthwara in the TNG episode.
I thought he looked familiar.
Where Wesley left to become the Traveler, and it was the very beginning of the DMZ and basically the formation of the Maquis without tilting all the way into the Maquis. Yeah. So that's funny, but not the same character because the timing wouldn't align. But yeah, but maybe that was his cousin or his twin brother. You never know. But yeah, you're absolutely, that was his grandfather. So I like Chakotay as a character.
Chakotay's a great character. I just don't think that this episode really showcased him very well.
They just don't tend to land a lot of really great episodes about him. So, all right, we'll let that one go. And we'll move on. Yeah, we'll move on to our final segment. Episode 20, go for it.
20, Think Tank, directed by Terrence O'Hara, story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, teleplay by Michael Taylor. So you got all the heavy hitters.
You got it.
Also aired in March 31st of 99. Voyager is being chased by the Hazari when a think tank offers assistance. Guest star as episode villain for a difference.
Yes.
Jason Alexander.
You're right. And his only other Star Trek appearance until we get him as the counselor on Voyager A in Prodigy. He was that was I sometimes forget that's him because that's such a minor role. He's
animated and it doesn't really look like him at all.
We're right. Yeah, because his character is a Tellarite. And again, an animated character. They do a pretty faithful job in Prodigy of making the heritage characters look like the actors.
Oh, they definitely look like who they're supposed to be, which is more than you can say for some people.
So this think tank, and it's funny because it's a think tank on a budget. It's one room with like a jellyfish in a case, and another one's like a computer. And it's interesting dialogue in this one. Like this Hazari is trying to destroy them, and Jason Alexander shows up and says, well, I can solve your problem. But the way our think tank works is that when we solve a problem for somebody, we ask for something in exchange, and it can vary, yada, yada, yada. And I do like how he rambles through and he says, we did this and that. And just 2 weeks ago, we cured the Vidian phage. And I was like, that's awesome. The Vidians that was a cool race that I loved from the first season, but of course endemic of everything in this show. If Voyager's traveling in a straight line, they're going to outlast certain species, and they did so with the Vidians. We didn't end up seeing them. We ended up seeing them in what was a hallucination in the end of season 3, in the episode Coda, but it was in episode 2 was the last time we really saw them. Or in season 2 was the kind of episode Deadlock, I think, was kind of the last time we really saw them. So that was a cool throwback, and I thought, boy, that'd be a cool species to someday become a part of the Federation because they had great medical technology and stuff. So, but yeah, Jason Alexander he's the bad guy because what he really wants is 7 of 9 to be compelled to join them, but he's also the one who created the issue that delivered them in the first place. So then they have to outthink the think tank, which of course they do, and find a way to turn. They have to find a way to turn the Hazari back around, and then our people escape. So, so obviously, like I said, this wasn't a sweeps episode, but it was kind of in between. But obviously, it was hey, we got Jason Alexander. Tune into this episode. I liked him. I thought the makeup was a little weird. He had like a kind of scraggly haired mullet and like your very generic, like, hey, I'm an alien, but I have like 2 protrusions on the side of my forehead or stuff. So there was nothing visually in this that really blew us away. But I mean, it's 1999, so it's not like when we get into Enterprise and we get into the Xindi, we do get, the insectoids and you get the aquatics, and like they're starting to really fully embrace CGI.
Yeah, I mean, we did have Species 8472 before this. So there are a few attempts, and I mean, we had like Odo and some of the shapeshifters, but we generally still at this point in Star Trek, we generally still stay away from fully CG characters.
Yeah,
which to be fair, as I mentioned in our talk about budget with Prodigy, it's expensive.
Right.
So sometimes the silicone
Right.
foreheads are easier.
And you know what? And again, as fans of the franchise in general, we accept it. Yeah, I like Jason Alexander's performance. It was very muted, so it's not like, oh boy, he was being George Costanza and being all crazy and shit. He was very muted and controlled, but it was it was great to see Janeway do what Janeway does and outsmart him,
Yep,
and bring
pulls a Janeway.
Yeah, and bring it back around again. So it's why Janeway and Seven are such beloved characters, because they always kind of outsmart the people who think that they are out unsmartable. Look at that, I got a new word for you, out unsmartable. So yeah, I thought that was a fun one. So other thoughts on this one before we go to our finale round?
There, just as a random side note, there was an episode of Star Wars Rebels that reminded me of this.
Okay, I'm not remembering it.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same. It was it was a listening ship.
Okay,
and they eventually overloaded it, but for whatever reason, when I was watching that, I was thinking of this episode because there was just a lot of like back and forth of like really smart people trying to cause havoc on our heroes.
Gotcha.
Everything.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if it was an inspiration. It could be. It's what made me think of this episode. So it's possible.
Yeah. There's a lot of, Star Trek and Star Wars.
There's a lot of cross-pollination.
Yeah. No matter what. And like I said, one of the things that frustrated me the most in dealing with fans that we would meet at shows and stuff when we were repping SFI is people that want to create this fake, well, I'm a Star Wars guy, so Star Trek is just not for me.
Or I'm a real science fiction fan. I don't like Star Trek. And then they'll mention something like, I don't know, Red Dwarf for Doctor Who. And it's like, okay.
Star Wars and Star Trek are so part and parcel to each other because they wouldn't the success of both wouldn't exist without the other one.
No.
So it's just and they're not something you have to choose between because they're not the same. And even if they were, who cares? So it's just that always just really drives me up the wall. So it's not something I miss hearing from strangers anymore. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Especially since I'm so heavily involved on this podcast network doing this show, and then also doing obviously Holocron with Mark, talking about Star Wars stuff. So, all right, so 6 episodes, technically 7. Let's have a favorite and a least favorite.
Just to be different, I won't go with Dark Frontier, as good as it is. I will choose as a favorite Course Oblivion.
There's
just a lot of really, really good stuff in there. I know it's a loop thrower. It's one of those wonky episodes, especially in the beginning, and you feel like it doesn't have a whole lot of lasting impact, but it's so well done.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel like we're gonna have the same ones here, but because I probably know what your least favorite is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in the exact same place. So obviously, just for completion's sake, we both hated the fight because they just didn't know what the hell they do. But yeah, of course, Oblivion, it didn't take either one of us long to figure out that they didn't just decide to entirely change the plot of the show and like, we're getting home now. But to make it so heartbreaking at the end that like, oh, they got so close that if they could have survived long enough to launch this probe, Voyager could have discovered it and gotten the secret sauce to change the engine, which was not harmful to organic material, only to the Silverbloods, and then they could have been home. But it didn't happen because it was just a second too late. Heartbreaker. Yep. But that, you know what? That's life. Life is full of a lot of shitty moments where you're just, I'm so close. Yeah. So yeah, no, I think that's the first time we've had, it's the first time in a bit that you and I have been in.
Where we've had exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly correct. So, well, cool. Well, that's the show. Next episode, we're going to get back into, for one episode only, random episode. And I think we'll have a guest. I've solicited it to a couple of people, but we'll be covering an episode of the original series, which it's been a while. We'll talk about that in segment 1, and then we will wrap up Star Trek Voyager, which had a particularly great season finale in season 5. So I was super excited about that. So before we get to the where you can find, I always forget to say this. Don't forget, we do have a mailbag at secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show. Let us know what you think about this episode or any of the SFU shows, our main
There's an
show.
actor or term we forgot, and you want to
Yeah,
remind us.
yeah.
Feel free.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to have that. So either this show, SFU, Holocron, or certainly Co-op Mode, or any of our Patreon shows, we'd love to hear from you over at that, and we would love to feature your comments on an upcoming episode of any of those programs. Don't forget, of course, our Secret Friends Unite Discord, publicly searchable. That's where we're really doing most of our social mediaizing. So we'd love to have you on board there to have conversations about geek stuff. Peter, where do people find you out there?
Well, you can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas. I'm generally not that active. You can find me more on the Discord for either the Grand Petoskey or Secret Friends Unite or United Trekkers of Michigan. You can find me there. A little bit more active there. You can also find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channels, where I'm playing a Cardassian science officer in an RPG. It's a lot of fun. We have a website. And you can also find me behind the scenes on Starship Excelsior.
Woo-hoo. You can also find me on all those same Discords, but I'm also on Threads and Instagram at the C3 TheCeeThree, where I'm just having a good time, posting pictures and having fun conversations. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Please email or join us on the Discord. But with that, friends, as always, I'm going to tell you thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and keep on trekking. That's on my shirt.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.